Thank you, Mr. President. I rise this morning to speak about two issues. The first will be on the matter that's before us, the veterans legislation. I'll also speak, but let me ask consent to speak as if in morning business on a separate topic, and would ask that that appear at a different part of the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, thanks very much, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak about the legislation. I want to commend the work of Chairman Sanders and others who have brought us to this point. We know we have a challenge ahead of us to pass this legislation, and the good news is that these issues are bipartisan. Both parties have a real concern about what happens to our veterans, what happens to our veterans' families. We often have different pathways to get there, but I think we do have a bipartisan concern. Maybe it's appropriate to start with a reflection on what I think our obligation is as members of the United States Senate, but I think it's our obligation as citizens as well. And years ago, I heard it expressed, we often express it by using the word worthy. When we consider what our veterans have done for us, it's important that we express gratitude in so many different ways, and sometimes that's one-on-one, expressing to a veteran we appreciate their service. Sometimes when there's a parade or another demonstration of public support for our veterans, that's important. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves, both, again, as elected officials and as citizens, is the following. Are we doing everything we can to prove ourselves worthy of the valor of our veterans? And I think the answer to that question, depending on what year it is, or depending on what time period it is, we'll get different answers to that question. Most of the time, we like to believe that the Congress is worthy of the valor of those veterans, that we're doing everything we can to help them. But we've got to be honest with ourselves and say that there are substantial periods of time when this body and the other body, both Senate and House, have not been worthy of the valor of our veterans because we haven't done the job to help veterans and their families. We hope, we pray, that this can be one of those moments when we are proving ourselves worthy of the valor of those veterans who served their country, and they didn't ask the price, they didn't put down conditions, they just served their country, and they ask us to enact legislation and policy that is commensurate with the sacrifice and the commitment that they made to their country. So it really is about keeping promises, and I hope we can be in one of those moments right now. The bill, as many across the country know, the bill improves VA health care coverage. It reauthorizes important job training programs for unemployed veterans and provides in-state tuition assistance benefits for all post-9/11 veterans through the GI Bill. We know that when you look at the unemployment data, that some of the highest percentages for any sector or category are post-9/11 veterans. A much higher unemployment rate than the overall unemployment rate, and even a higher unemployment rate than their fellow veterans. In this case, for this bill, hundreds of people across Pennsylvania have reached out to my office urging that the Senate pass this bill. It has the support from various veteran service organizations, including the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, the American Legion, and the VFW, just to name a few. And I just wanted to address a couple of provisions in the bill, ones that are particularly significant to Pennsylvania and some of the work that we've been doing. The VA in Pittsburgh, the VA healthcare system in Pittsburgh, had a terrible tragedy not too long ago where several people lost their lives, several veterans lost their lives while in the care of the VA healthcare system. There was a Legionnaires outbreak. Legionella was the problem in the water system, and that terrible tragedy was obviously a devastating loss for those families, not just the city of Pittsburgh, but all of southwestern Pennsylvania was affected. So we're thinking of them today when we reflect upon some of the provisions in this bill. Veterans and their loved ones need to feel confident and secure in the care that they receive at all VA healthcare facilities. And the failures, and there's no other way to describe them, the failures that occurred at the VA in southwestern Pennsylvania surrounding this outbreak of Legionnaire's disease is, in a word, unacceptable. And frankly, that's not a strong enough word to express the outrage that I felt, and I know people across southwestern Pennsylvania and beyond felt. So I worked to and led the introduction of legislation to deal with this. Portions of what we worked on are included in this bill, and we're very happy about that. Specifically, the bill requires the VA to implement local and state reporting requirements of infectious diseases. The bill also requires that the VA develop performance measures to assess whether the veterans' integrated service networks and medical centers are complying with these requirements. So we're happy that that's part of the legislation. Secondly, I just wanted to highlight another part of the legislation which is very important to me. Fortunately, it includes the Corporal Michael J. Cresens Act, which Senator Toomey and I introduced last year. The bill renames the VA Medical Center on Woodland Avenue in Philadelphia after Corporal Cresens. He was Philadelphia's only, the city of Philadelphia's only Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam War. Just a quick description of why he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his service in Vietnam. We know it's the highest honor that can be granted to any soldier. In this case, for his actions in Vietnam on November the 20th, 1968. His Medal of Honor citation states that he gave his life when he, quote, left the relative safety of his own position, seized a nearby machine gun, and with complete disregard for his safety, charged 100 meters up a slope toward the enemy's bunkers, which he effectively silenced. It goes on to say the following: as a result of his heroic actions, his company was able to maneuver freely with minimal danger and to complete its mission, defeating the enemy, unquote. So we're grateful that his family will have some measure of peace of mind that his sacrifice and his service is remembered. And I want to thank Chairman Sanders for including that in the bill, and I know Senator Toomey joins me in that note of gratitude.